I grip Eli's small hand a little tighter as we step through the heavy glass doors of the Copperhouse Grill. The rich scent of aged steaks and buttery sauces wraps around us like an expensive perfume. A hostess with perfect posture greets us, her practiced smile warming when she spots my 8-year-old son straightening his little clip-on tie. "Good evening, Miss Monroe. Your family is already seated." My heart does a small flip. $600. That's what it costs to secure this corner table for my parents' 45th anniversary. $600 from my marketing job salary that already stretches too thin between mortgage payments and Eli's school needs. But tonight needs to be perfect. "Ready, buddy?" I ask Eli, who nods solemnly. The restaurant unfolds before us, all amber lighting and polished wood. A piano player coaxes something classical from the grand piano in the corner. Couples lean into intimate conversations. The hostess leads us past it all toward the large round table where my family waits. I spot them immediately. My younger sister, Brianna, her perfectly highlighted hair cascading over a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her husband, Derek, nods absently while thumbing his phone. Their 2 boys, 7 and 5, squirm in their chairs despite the tablet propped between them. My father, Frank, sits tall in his chair, my mother, Elaine, beside him, both beaming at Brianna's sons. On the table between my parents rest 2 wrapped gifts with bright blue ribbons, one for each of Brianna's boys. Nothing else. "We're here," I announce, summoning warmth into my voice. Mom glances up. "Oh, Alexis, there you are." Not a single pair of eyes shifts toward Eli. "Happy anniversary," I say, leaning down to kiss my mother's cheek. It's cool against my lips. 45 years is incredible. Dad accepts my kiss with a stiff nod. "Thank you for setting this up." Brianna barely looks away from her phone. "Hey, sis." I help Eli into the empty chair beside me, watching as he carefully smooths his napkin over his lap like I taught him. His dark eyes dart around the table, taking everything in. I can tell he notices the gifts. The absence of acknowledgement. "Eli picked out cards for both of you," I say, nudging my son gently. He reaches into his little suit pocket, producing 2 handmade cards with careful crayon drawings. "Happy anniversary, Grandma and Grandpa." Mom takes them with a distracted smile. "That's nice, dear." The cards disappear into her purse without being opened. "Alexis, be reasonable. Your sister needs this more." The memory of my mother's voice slices through me, sharp and familiar. How many times had I heard those words growing up? When Brianna needed the new coat more than I needed winter boots. When Brianna deserved the last piece of cake because she'd had a hard day at school. When Brianna required my college fund because her wedding venue had to be perfect. It's a pattern I've never broken. Even now, with Eli to raise on my own after his father walked out, I still send Brianna money when she calls with her latest crisis. Still show up to every family function, hoping that this time will be different. Still wanting, for Eli's sake, just one perfect family dinner. A waiter appears with leather-bound menus. I watch Eli's eyes widen at the fancy script, his finger carefully tracing the descriptions of each dish. He pauses at the shrimp pasta, his favorite meal for special occasions. "Would anyone care for appetizers?" the waiter asks. Brianna's boys shout their demands, while my father nods approvingly at their healthy appetites. When the waiter turns expectantly toward Eli, my son looks up at my father first. A child's instinctive deference to the family patriarch, then back to the menu. "Could I have the shrimp pasta, please?" Eli asks, his voice barely audible over the piano music. The waiter looks toward my father, who continues studying his menu as if Eli hadn't spoken. The silence stretches uncomfortable seconds longer. Then Brianna smirks, not bothering to look up from her phone. "We didn't order for him." My breath catches. Before I can respond, my father adds coldly, "You should have packed him something." The table goes deadly silent. Even Brianna's boys stop squirming, sensing the sudden tension. Eli shrinks in his chair, his eyes dropping to his empty plate. His small shoulders curve inward like he's trying to disappear. I feel something crack inside me. Not dramatically, but with the quiet finality of ice breaking on a winter lake. 5 years of raising this gentle, kind boy alone. 5 years of bringing him to family gatherings where he's treated as an afterthought. 5 years of telling myself it would get better if I just tried harder. My face remains perfectly still as I process what has just happened. My family has deliberately excluded my child from dinner. At an event I paid for. At a table I reserved. The waiter shifts uncomfortably beside us. "Perhaps I should come back." "No," I say, my voice unnervingly calm. "That won't be necessary." I stand slowly, straightening to my full height. "Please cancel any pending orders for this table. Alexis." My mother begins, alarm creeping into her voice. "Bill it all to my father." I continue, meeting the waiter's eyes. It's his celebration after all. I reach for Eli's hand. He looks up at me, surprise replacing the hurt in his eyes. It's the first time he's seen me stand up to my family. The first time I've chosen him, truly chosen him over their approval. Frank's face reddens. Now wait just a minute. No, I say again. I don't think I will. Brianna's mouth hangs open in shock as I guide Eli from his chair. We walk away from the table, past the curious glances of nearby diners, through the elegant restaurant where I'd hoped my son might finally feel included in his own family. He squeezes my hand as we reach the doors. Are you mad, Mom? Not at you, I tell him. Never at you. Only at myself, for how long it's taken me to see what was right in front of me all along. Later that night, my phone buzzes for the 13th time. I don't need to check it to know who it's from. The screen lights up the darkened kitchen where I sit alone. Bank statements spread across the table like fallen leaves. Each notification brings another accusation. Frank, you humiliated us in front of everyone. After everything we've done. Elaine, how could you embarrass your father on his special night? After everything we've done for you. Brianna, so dramatic. It was just dinner. You're overreacting as usual. I sip cold coffee and pull another statement from the stack. The truth hides in plain sight between deposit notices and withdrawal confirmations. My fingertip traces each transaction as if touching a bruise to confirm it's real. There it is. $900 transferred to Brianna's account on the 1st of every month for the past 8 months. Half her rent, though she'd claimed it was for emergency car repairs the first time. Then medical bills. Then her boys' school supplies. The money never came back. Another statement reveals $3,000 in emergency loans that vanished without repayment or acknowledgement. For years of my life cataloged in financial support that no one remembers giving. I close my eyes, the numbers burning behind my lids. When I open them, I notice Eli's school photo on the refrigerator. His cautious smile. Those serious eyes taking everything in. Just like at the restaurant. My phone buzzes again. I silence it. 3 days pass in blessed quiet. I'm chopping vegetables for Eli's lunch when knocking erupts at the front door, 3 sharp raps that speak of entitlement. Through the peephole, I see them. Frank stands center, shoulders squared in his golf polo. Elaine hovers behind him, arms crossed. Brianna shifts her weight from one designer heel to the other, chewing her lip in fabricated distress. I consider pretending I'm not home, but their car is visible in my driveway. I've run out of places to hide. Coming, I call, wiping my hands on a dish towel. The moment I open the door, Frank pushes past me into my modest living room. The space shrinks with their presence. We need to talk, he says, not waiting for an invitation. Eli is at school, thankfully. This isn't something an 8-year-old should witness. About what? I ask, closing the door behind them. Frank's nostrils flare. About that dinner fiasco. You embarrassed this entire family. Brianna's eyes well with practiced tears. People are still talking about it. Our reputation. Frank slaps a folded paper onto my coffee table. It unfolds to reveal a typed invoice for $1,200, double my original deposit. You owe us. Elaine steps forward, voice honey sweet but eyes cold. Be reasonable, Alexis. Pay up, or we'll tell everyone what an ungrateful daughter you really are. The threat hangs in the air between us. I feel that familiar urge to cave, to write a check just to make them leave, to buy another few weeks of peace. Instead, I say, excuse me for a moment. I need to make a call. I step into the kitchen, my hand steadier than I expect as I dial. Aunt Carla? It's Alexis. Could you and Uncle Ray come over? Right now? It's important. 20 minutes of frosty silence later, the doorbell rings. Ray and Carla enter like reinforcements in a battle I've fought alone too long. Ray's 6'4" frame and quiet dignity make Frank straighten slightly. Carla, my mother's older sister, surveys the scene with sharp eyes that miss nothing. What's this about? Ray asks, voice calm but carrying authority Frank has always resented. Brianna starts her performance again. Alexis abandoned us at Dad's anniversary dinner and now won't take responsibility. That's not what happened, I interrupt, surprising myself with my steady voice. They refused to feed Eli at a dinner I paid for. Frank steps toward me, finger pointing. You listen here. Back off, Frank, Ray says quietly. Not moving but somehow placing himself between us. Carla perches on the arm of my sofa. I've watched this pattern for decades. You've always favored Brianna, always expected Alexis to sacrifice without complaint. That's ridiculous, Elaine sputters. Is it? I walk to the dining table and return with my stack of statements. I've been paying half of Brianna's rent for 8 months. $1,800 a month and I've covered half. That's $7,200. Brianna's face pales slightly. Emergency loans that were never repaid. I flip through more pages. Free babysitting for her boys while she and Derek take weekend trips. Emotional support that's never reciprocated. My voice gains strength with each word. This ends today. Eminencia. Carla nods. When's the last time anyone helped Alexis? When she was divorcing Jason? When Eli had pneumonia last winter? When her car broke down in July? Silence settles over the room. Frank stares at the floor. Elaine examines her manicure. Brianna swallows hard. That's what I thought, Carla says. I walk to my purse and remove 6 crisp $100 bills, money I can't really spare but need to spend for my sanity. I slide them across the coffee table toward the invoice. Half the deposit. That's fair. Huh. Frank reaches for the cash. Now about the rest. The rent payments to Brianna stopped today, I say, voice level despite my pounding heart. And I've documented everything, every transfer, every text begging for money, every promise to pay me back. If anyone wants to talk about who's ungrateful, I have receipts. Brianna's false tears dry instantly. You can't do that. I have bills. So do I. I gather the statements and return them to their folder. We're finished here. Frank sputters objections, his face flushing dark red. Brianna looks panicked, her eyes darting to Elaine for support that doesn't materialize. I believe my niece asked you to leave, Carla says, standing. Ray moves toward the door, opening it wide in silent invitation. They file out Frank first, then Elaine, then Brianna, who pauses to hiss. You'll regret this. Before Ray's presence urges her forward. I close the door behind them. The house feels suddenly larger, the air easier to breathe. Ray squeezes my shoulder once before he and Carla slip away with promises to call tomorrow. Alone, I slide down against the door until I sit on the floor. My hands tremble violently now, tears I wouldn't let them see build behind my eyes. But I hold them back. Eli will be home soon. He doesn't need to see me cry. Not today. Today, for the first time in my adult life, I've chosen myself. 2 days later, I checked my phone for the 10th time this morning, scrolling through my notifications with a knot forming in my stomach. Brianna's Facebook status glows from the screen. Some people forget where they came from when they think money makes them better than family. 27 likes. 5 comments asking what happened. Mom's response appears directly below, complete with heart emoji. Some people forget where they came from. The vagueness is deliberate. Just enough information to signal something's wrong without providing context. Just enough to make people curious. Just enough to make me the villain. My phone rings. Cousin Beth's name flashes on the screen. The 3rd family member to call today. I send it to voicemail, adding her to the growing list of calls I'm screening. The quiet satisfaction of this small boundary surprises me. 2 weeks ago, I would have answered immediately. Desperate to explain my side. Not anymore. My notepad sits open on the kitchen counter. Every interaction since the restaurant confrontation, methodically documented. Dates. Times. Exact wording. What began as a defensive measure has become oddly comforting. Like building a fortress around Eli and me, one fact at a time. The phone buzzes with a text from Jennifer, my coworker. Coffee before work tomorrow? You seem like you could use a friend. I type back yes, before I can overthink it. Sunday morning brings church. A ritual I've maintained for Eli's sake despite my complicated relationship with faith. We slip into our usual pew, and I immediately feel the weight of stares. Mrs. Rollins leans toward her husband, whispering behind her hymnal. Their eyes dart my way, filled with concern that feels nothing like compassion. Are you okay, Mom? Eli asks, noticing my white-knuckle grip on the program. I force my fingers to relax. I'm fine, buddy. Later, in the fellowship hall, I overhear Elaine's friend Patricia. Having mental issues since the divorce. Such a shame for that little boy. I guide Eli toward the door without comment. Another note for my documentation when we get home. Tuesday afternoon brings my 2nd therapy session. Dr. Winter sits across from me, her silver-framed glasses catching the light as she reviews my notes. This is excellent documentation, Alexis. She says, tapping the notebook. Most people don't think to record these interactions. I need to remember exactly what's happening. I explain. Sometimes I doubt myself. That's common with long-term family patterns. She nods. You're establishing boundaries many people never manage. How does that feel? I consider the question carefully. Like putting down something heavy I didn't realize I was carrying. Thursday evening finds me pushing a cart through Sunridge Market. Eli beside me, reading items from our shopping list. We turn into the baking aisle, and my body tenses before my mind fully registers why. Brianna stands near the flour, her phone pressed to her ear. She spots us immediately. I'll call you back, she says loudly, ending her call. Her eyes narrow as she approaches. Well, if it isn't the family destroyer. Eli edges closer to me. I place a protective hand on his shoulder. We're just grocery shopping, Brianna, I say quietly. This isn't the place. There is no right place when you're tearing a family apart over nothing. Her voice rises, drawing attention from other shoppers. Mom's heartbroken. Dad barely speaks. All because you couldn't handle one dinner? An elderly woman with a cart pauses, openly watching. A store employee glances our way. This isn't about dinner, I say, keeping my voice low and steady. It's about respect, for me and for Eli. Respect? She laughs, the sound brittle and hollow. What about respecting the people who've always been there for you? Who've supported you through everything? The lie is so blatant I almost laugh. Memories flash. The rent payments I've been making for her apartment. The emergency cash transfers that never got repaid. The childcare I provided while she and Derek took weekend trips. You'll regret choosing your pride over family. She continues, voice dropping to a theatrical hiss. Family is everything, Alexis. Everything. I said, the old me would have apologized. Would have found some way to smooth things over. Would have taken Brianna for coffee afterward to talk it out. Ending with me somehow apologizing for being hurt. Instead I simply say, excuse us, and guide my cart around her. Really? You're walking away? She calls after us. I keep moving, Eli's small hand finding mine. You did good, Mom, he whispers, once we're in the next aisle. His approval fills me with unexpected strength. The support continues to appear in unlikely places. Jennifer meets me for coffee before work, listening without judgment as I share carefully edited highlights of the family drama. Sounds like you're finally standing up for yourself, she observes. About time. Mississippi Watson, Eli's teacher, mentions during parent pickup that he seems more confident in class. Whatever changes you're making at home, they're working, she says with a warm smile. Dr. Winters validates my boundaries as healthy, not selfish. Your family has a narrative about who you are and what you owe them. She explains. When you challenge that narrative, they'll escalate before they accept the new reality. Aunt Carla calls daily. Her check-in's a lifeline of family connection without the toxicity. Your mother pulled the same routine when I refused to loan Frank money for his failed hardware store venture. She reminds me. 2 months of silent treatment, then she pretended nothing happened. Most surprising is the single-parent support group I joined at Dr. Winter's suggestion. Here, among strangers sharing similar struggles, I find myself opening up about patterns I've never articulated before. Their nodding understanding feels like permission to continue healing. The following week, on Wednesday, my phone rings during a client meeting. Eli's school number flashes on the screen. Miss Monroe? The principal's voice sounds strained. Could you come in this afternoon? There's a situation we need to discuss. Ice forms in my stomach. Is Eli okay? He's fine, but we've received a concerning report. It would be better to discuss in person. 3 hours later, I sit across from Principal Delaney, a woman from Child Protective Services beside him. My hands shake slightly as I fold them in my lap. Someone has filed an anonymous report claiming neglect. The CPS worker explains, her tone professional but not unkind. We're required by law to investigate all reports. The fear that initially flooded me transforms into something harder, colder. What kind of neglect? Inadequate food unsupervised after school hours. Possible emotional neglect. Each accusation is so absurd it would be laughable if it weren't so serious. My mind immediately catalogs the facts. Fully stocked fridge. Eli's after-school program attendance records. His excellent academic performance. When would you like to conduct your home visit? I ask. My voice steadier than I feel. The CPS worker looks surprised at my directness. Tomorrow morning, if that works for you. Perfect. That night, I don't panic or cry. Instead, I clean our already tidy home, organize Eli's schoolwork into labeled folders, and print out his medical records showing regular checkups. I lay out his carefully planned lunch for the next day. Then I call Aunt Carla. Brianna, she says immediately when I explain. Has to be. The CPS worker arrives promptly at 9 the next morning. She tours our modest but well-kept home, checks the refrigerator and pantry, reviews Eli's school records, and observes his clean bedroom with appropriate toys and books. Miss Monroe, she says as she makes final notes. I'll be closing this case immediately. This appears retaliatory. What does that mean? I ask, though I already know. It means someone likely filed this report to punish you, not out of genuine concern for your son. She looks up from her clipboard. Unfortunately, we see this in family disputes. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. After she leaves, I call Jennifer to reschedule our lunch. Then I make another call, to an attorney recommended by a member of my support group. I need to document harassment. I explain over the phone. And I need to know my options. 2 days later, I sit in Attorney Lawrence's office with my evidence spread before us. Every Venmo transfer to Brianna. Every rent receipt. Every begging text message. $7,200 over 8 months, she says. Reviewing the figures. Plus childcare hours equivalent to approximately $4,000 in services. She looks up at me over her glasses. You've been thorough. That's good. I'm learning to be. And you've been recording all interactions with family members? I nod toward my notebook. Dates. Times. Exact wording whenever possible. Excellent. I can draft cease and desist letters based on the harassment pattern and false CPS report. She taps her pen against her legal pad. You understand this will effectively sever your relationship with them? The question should terrify me. Weeks ago, it would have. Now I feel only clarity. This isn't family drama anymore, I tell her. It's war. I watch the FedEx driver retreat down my walkway. His shoes crunching on autumn leaves. The cease and desist letters rest in my hands. 3 identical envelopes addressed to Frank, Elaine, and Brianna Monroe. My attorney, Sarah, assured me this was necessary after the CPS ambush. You're doing the right thing, she had said yesterday, sliding the documentation across her desk. False CPS reports are serious. These letters establish a paper trail. The envelopes contain meticulous records. Bank statements showing years of financial support. Text messages begging for emergency loans. And a formal statement from the CPS worker confirming their visit appeared retaliatory. Sarah's stern warning about legal consequences sits prominently on the first page. My terms are clear. The financial exploitation ends today. I drop the letters into the outgoing mail slot and exhale. For the first time in years, I'm not seeking approval or fearing disappointment. I'm simply protecting what's mine. My phone buzzes that evening while I help Eli with homework. A number I don't recognize. Alexis? It's Derek. Brianna's husband. My finger hovers over the end call button. Please don't hang up, he says quickly. I'm not calling to argue. Then why are you calling? My voice remains neutral, neither welcoming nor hostile. Brianna pushed for the CPS report, he admits, his voice low. I tried to stop her but. He pauses. Look, check your Venmo in 5 minutes. I'm paying back everything, the rent, all of it. Why now? Because this has gone too far. The resignation in his voice surprises me. $3,600, that's what we owe you, right? I'm done enabling this. She's on her own now. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, my phone pings with a Venmo notification. $3,600, with a simple message. I'm sorry. Another text follows. They're planning something else. Be careful. I don't respond immediately. This unexpected alliance feels like quicksand. Too dangerous to reject outright. Too unstable to embrace. Instead, I screenshot the transaction and forward it to Sarah. Documentation. Always documentation. The weekend arrives with unseasonably warm October sunshine. Eli spends the morning at a friend's birthday party, giving me rare quiet hours. I decide to tackle the garage, a project I've avoided since the divorce. Physical labor feels right. A way to channel the storm of emotions into something productive. 3 hours in, sweat dampening my t-shirt. I unearth a shoebox tucked behind my old college textbooks. The sight of it sends an electric jolt through my body. This box came from my childhood bedroom during the hasty move after my divorce. I'd forgotten it existed. I carry it into the kitchen, my hands trembling slightly as I remove the lid. The scent of old paper and forgotten memories rises to meet me. School report cards with teacher comments about my quiet, helpful nature. A blue ribbon from a 5th grade science fair. A handful of photographs showing a solemn-faced girl standing apart from her beaming younger sister. At the bottom, a yellowed envelope. My mother's precise handwriting addresses it to my father. The date August 1st, 988, 1 week after my birth, makes my heart stutter. I slide my finger under the sealed flap, which opens easily after decades. The letter inside is written on my mother's personal stationery, the pale blue paper creased and fragile with age. Frank. I wasn't ready for another baby. Not so soon after Brianna. I try, but I can't seem to bond with this one like I did with our first. When I look at Alexis, I don't feel that same rush of love. Sometimes I wonder if there's something wrong with me, or with her. She's so quiet, so watchful. Nothing like our Brianna. What if this never changes? What if I never love her the same way? Elaine. At the bottom, in my father's blockier handwriting, a response. She'll grow out of it. Just favor Brianna until then. Less pressure on you that way. The paper slips from my fingers, landing silently on the kitchen counter. 35 years of feeling like an outsider in my own family suddenly crystallizes into perfect clarity. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't my fault. My exclusion wasn't something I could fix with more effort or understanding. It was by design. From the very beginning. I stare at the evidence of my mother's emotional rejection. A confession she never intended for me to see. The familiar ache in my chest transforms into something else entirely. Not hurt, exactly. Not even anger. Just a profound, overwhelming certainty. I reach for my phone and photograph the letter. Without allowing myself to hesitate, I send the image to my parents and Brianna. No subject line. No message. Just the evidence. Then I block all 3 numbers. My Aunt Carla calls the next afternoon while Eli plays in the backyard. Her voice carries a strange mix of shock and vindication. "I ran into your mother at Safeway," she says without preamble. "Elaine looked like she'd seen a ghost. White as a sheet. She kept muttering that you destroyed the family." I watch Eli through the kitchen window as he carefully constructs an elaborate fort from fallen branches. "I didn't destroy anything, Carla. I just exposed the truth." "Well, that letter's certainly done its work," Carla continues. "Your cousin Melissa called. Apparently, your sister's been on a rampage. Screaming at your parents about documented favoritism." A pause. "Frank's blaming Elaine for keeping the letter all these years. I should feel something satisfaction, perhaps. Or grief. Instead, I experience a strange weightlessness. As if I've set down a burden I've carried so long I'd forgotten it was there." People are starting to see through Brianna's narrative. Carla adds. "That perfect family image is cracking wide open." After we hang up, I join Eli in the backyard. He's created an impressive structure, complete with a small entrance and what appears to be a lookout tower. "Wanna see inside, Mom?" he asks. His face flushed with creative pride. When I nod, he leads me carefully to the entrance, pointing out features along the way. He pauses suddenly, studying my face with surprising intensity. "You look different," he decides. "Different how?" He considers this seriously, head tilted. "You don't look worried anymore." I squat down to his level, meeting his earnest gaze. "I'm not worried anymore," I tell him, realizing as I say it that it's true. The tightness that's lived between my shoulder blades for as long as I can remember has finally released its grip. Family narratives shatter easily when exposed to light. Mine took 35 years to crack, but now that it has, I feel only the quiet strength of truth. The foundation beneath me feels solid for the first time in my life. I duck my head and follow my son into the fort he's built with his own hands, leaving the past where it belongs. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday, 2 weeks later. Official crisp white envelope with a prestigious law firm's embossed return address. My fingers trembled slightly as I sliced it open after sending Eli off to school. "Notice of petition for grandparent visitation rights," the heading announced in bold. My stomach dropped as I scanned the formal legal language. Frank and Elaine, no longer mom and dad in my mind, were demanding court-ordered access to Eli. The document cited Arizona family law statutes and painted me as an emotionally unstable mother, who was vindicatively withholding their grandson from them. I sank onto the kitchen chair, the paper shaking in my hands. They were actually taking me to court. After years of barely acknowledging Eli's existence, suddenly they were claiming some deep bond that I was cruelly severing. "Miss Monroe has exhibited increasingly erratic behavior," the petition claimed, including abruptly severing family relationships without cause, making unfounded accusations, and demonstrating an inability to maintain healthy familial connections essential to the child's well-being. The lawyer's name at the bottom was from one of Scottsdale's most expensive firms. Of course, they'd spare no expense now, when it served their image. For one terrible moment, fear gripped me like a vice. What if a judge sided with them? What if my son was forced into supervised visits with people who had deliberately excluded him, who had filed false reports against me? The thought of Eli being legally mandated to spend time with them while I waited helplessly outside made my chest constrict. Then there was the money. Attorney fees, court costs. How much would fighting this drain from Eli's college fund? From our stability? I called my attorney with shaking hands. She promised to review the documents immediately, but the hour until she called back stretched endlessly. I paced our kitchen, imagining worst-case scenarios where judges who didn't know us made decisions that would haunt Eli for years. When my phone finally rang, my attorney's voice came through calm and steady. "They have no case, Alexis. Arizona law won't support them." "You're sure?" I pressed, needing absolute certainty. "Grandparent visitation in Arizona requires extraordinary circumstances. The court prioritizes parental rights unless there's clear evidence that severing the grandparent relationship would genuinely harm the child." She paused. "Given what you've shown me about their minimal involvement in Eli's life, plus the false CPS report, their case is laughably weak." The relief nearly buckled my knees. But as I hung up, anger replaced fear. This wasn't just another manipulation. It was a declaration of war against my son's well-being. I spent the weekend building my fortress. Every slight against Eli, every missed birthday, every dismissive comment, all documented chronologically in a massive folder. Bank statements showing thousands funneled to Brianna while Eli wore hand-me-downs. Text messages where I'd begged them to attend Eli's school performances met with excuses or silence. And at the center of it all, that damning letter from 1988. The one where my mother had written to my father that she couldn't bond with this one and his callous response to favor Brianna until then. The smoking gun that explained a lifetime of rejection. Monday morning, I called Eli's school and filed for a restricted access order. Only approved individuals would be permitted to pick him up or visit Aunt Carla, Uncle Ray, my close friend Jennifer. Frank and Elaine's names were conspicuously absent. "Is everything okay, Miss Monroe?" the principal asked, concern evident in her voice. "Just taking precautions," I answered. "There's a family situation being resolved." That afternoon, I met with my estate attorney and updated my will. If anything happened to me, Carla and Ray would become Eli's legal guardians. Not Frank and Elaine. Not Brianna. The document felt like armor protection extending beyond my lifetime. When my attorney delivered our formal response to the grandparent visitation petition, she called afterward with barely contained satisfaction. "Their lawyer just called me," she reported. "He's advising them to drop the case." "What changed his mind?" I asked. "Your documentation. Particularly that letter from 1988. He said he can't in good conscience pursue a case that would be this damaging to his clients if it went public." I had won. Not just this battle, but the war. Years of allowing myself to be the family doormat had cultivated in me the perfect weapon, meticulous record-keeping born from desperate attempts to understand what I'd done wrong. The following morning, I mailed identical letters to Frank, Elaine, and Brianna. 1 page, 5 sentences. I have documented every instance of neglect, manipulation, and cruelty toward Eli and myself. I have shared this documentation with my attorneys and trusted friends with instructions to make it public if necessary. If you contact me or Eli again in any way, I will involve law enforcement and release everything. This is not a negotiation or a temporary boundary. It is permanent. That evening, I gathered every family photo containing Frank, Elaine, and Brianna. The frames emptied one by one as I fed each picture into the shredder, watching as smiling faces from holiday dinners and forced family gatherings disappeared into confetti. In their place, I created a new photo wall. Eli and me at the Grand Canyon. Carla and Ray teaching him to fish. Jennifer's family joining us for Thanksgiving. Our chosen family, the people who actually showed up. My phone buzzed with texts from extended family members I hadn't heard from in years. My father's brother asking if what he'd heard was true. My mother's cousin expressing shock at the CPS report. The power dynamics were shifting. The carefully curated family narrative crumbling. The following weekend, I booked a camping trip to Sedona. Just Eli and me under the stars, our first true Just Us adventure. As we packed the car, my phone pinged with a notification. One final message from Elaine. My finger hovered over the delete button. Part of me, the old Alexis, wanted to know what she had to say. What justification or plea or threat she was making now. I took a deep breath and pressed delete without reading it. Some messages don't deserve to be read. Some chapters need to stay firmly closed. Ready for an adventure, buddy? I called to Eli, who was carefully arranging his sleeping bag in the trunk. His smile, relaxed and genuine in a way I hadn't seen in months, was all the confirmation I needed. 3 months later, the tent stakes sink into the rusty earth with satisfying thuds as I secure our temporary home. Sedona's magnificent red rock formations tower around us, catching the late afternoon sun like ancient sentinels on fire. Eli darts between the juniper trees, his laughter bouncing off canyon walls as he collects pine cones for our evening campfire. "Mom, look at this one." He holds up a perfectly formed specimen, eyes bright with discovery. It's bigger than my hand. No phones chirping with accusatory texts, no family drama suffocating us like too tight clothing. Just open skies, fresh air, and my son's voice stronger and more confident than I've ever heard it. That's perfect for our collection. I call back, smiling as he carefully places it with the others. Eli chatters about rock formations and desert wildlife as we finish setting up camp, his knowledge surprising me. The quiet, hesitant boy from the Copper House Grill has transformed into this curious explorer who now speaks without first checking if anyone wants to hear his thoughts. Our laughter echoes against the canyon walls as we race to fill the water jugs, playfully splashing each other at the campground spigot. His giggles uninhibited and free-fill spaces in my heart I hadn't realized were empty. Later, our simple camp dinner feels luxurious compared to that sterile restaurant meal months ago. Flames dance in the fire pit while we roast hot dogs and marshmallows. Eli sits cross-legged on a flat rock, completely absorbed in the careful rotation of his marshmallow, determined to achieve the perfect golden brown. When he looks up, chocolate smeared across his chin and graham cracker crumbs dusting his shirt, his expression turns suddenly serious. "You seem happier, Mom." The words hit me with unexpected force. This observant child sees everything, always has. I exhale slowly, watching the flames. I am. 3 months ago, those same words might have been forced reassurance. Tonight, they're simple truth. The dynamic between us remains mother and son navigating the world together, but utterly transformed from that tense night at the restaurant. While Eli hunts for the perfect stick for another marshmallow, I find myself reflecting on the journey that brought us here. For years, I'd worn my peacekeeper role like a second skin, sacrificing my own well-being to maintain a toxic family harmony that never really existed. The guilt that once shadowed my every boundary-setting attempt has been replaced by something stronger, confident, self-advocacy. I no longer believe I'm selfish for refusing to be mistreated. The mantra that carried me through those final confrontations replays in my mind. We deserve respect, not just inclusion. My monthly therapy sessions have helped me process the family trauma without drowning in it. I've found friendship with other parents who understand healthy boundaries aren't walls but necessary protection. At work, the promotion I received last month reflects energy finally redirected toward my career rather than managing family crises. Eli's teacher reported his grades improving alongside his confidence. And my relationship with Aunt Carla and Uncle Ray has deepened into something genuine, the family we've chosen rather than inherited. Last week, Jennifer from accounting stopped by my desk, her eyes red-rimmed from crying over her mother's latest manipulation attempt. "How do you do it?" she'd asked. "Just walk away from family?" I'd shared what took me years to understand. You can love people from a distance. Sometimes that's the most honest love there is. I gave her the number for my therapist and the title of the book that helped me recognize generational patterns. Finding purpose in supporting others through similar struggles has become an unexpected gift. Morning arrives with pink gold lights spilling over distant mesas. Eli and I hike toward a viewpoint overlooking the valley, our breathing synchronized in comfortable silence. Standing here, I realize my body feels different, shoulders relaxed, spine straight, breath coming easily. Eli reaches for my hand naturally as we pause at the overlook, trust fully restored between us. "Mom?" he asks, squinting into the brightening sky. "Yes, buddy? I like our family better now." I squeeze his small hand in mine. "Me too." The simple truth settles between us. Family is what we build, not what we're born into. As the sun crests the horizon, mother and son stand silhouetted against the dawn sky,